Hi everyone. For this video, I've decided to breach into a subject I've long considered doing content on, video games. Obviously though, since I don't have money to license, and frankly I think many video game companies are being ridiculously sue-happy when it comes to gameplay videos, I'm a bit limited in what I can and can't show. However, since I've posted many music-related videos over the past few years, I'm taking the opportunity to discuss a small beef I have with both music and video games. Namely, the fact that many video game soundtracks aren't widely available for fans to get a hold of. First, I'll explain why it's important to me. While rock music is my favorite genre, I'm also a big fan of video game music in general. From chiptunes all the way up to fully arranged bodies of work featuring lush orchestration. I've been a fan ever since I was very little. In my hometown, there was a great pizza place that had arcade machines. On average, 2 machines. Sometimes they also had a pinball machine. And the earliest memory I have of playing an arcade game comes from playing the Sega classic Outrun at that pizza place. Badly, of course, I was only about 3 years old, but it was still fun while it lasted. And one of the things that's made Outrun stand out is that beautiful synthwave soundtrack. Since then, I've played dozens of other games, many of which have great music. But the problem is, it's hard to come by copies of the soundtrack that I can take anywhere if I can't take the game with me. Thankfully, Outrun is an exception to that on both ends, as I found the soundtrack on iTunes, and I have ports of the game for both my Nintendo Switch and my 3DS. This is why I greatly appreciate it when a soundtrack is available. Granted, I prefer to collect music over CD format, so I have a physical copy, but I'm willing to look for downloads as well, as I had to do for the soundtracks for the first 4 Mortal Kombat games, seeing as the CD prints are exceptionally rare and expensive, plus the iTunes downloads have great sound quality. It's especially nerve-wracking though when you have a group such as the Pokemon Company, who were printing soundtracks from their games for a while, then they just suddenly stopped. They did this after releasing the soundtrack to Pokemon Sun and Moon versions. What's so jarring about when they did that? Well, for those of you watching who aren't familiar with the franchise, they followed that pair of games with what I guess you could call an alternate universe retelling of the story in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon versions, which feature some tunes from their predecessors, but also quite a number of new tunes that, as far as I know, aren't officially available for download. It's possible that Nintendo has them available through some members-only service, but like most of their business decisions, it's probably way too expensive for actual working stiffs like me to afford. And it's not like the pandemic had something to do with this. The sudden stop in printing their CDs happened in 2017. Even if they aren't willing to print physical CDs for soundtracks to the core series games they released since then, it doesn't make much sense for them not to make the music downloadable. The fans who are interested in the soundtracks most likely have the games already, so making the music available would just be providing additional money to a company that clearly has little to lose. This ties back to something that gets debated frequently among gamers, the question of whether or not video games qualify as art. In my opinion, many of them do. And the music in these games is a crucial part of that. As the years go by, some games become less accessible, and with that, it can be hard to appreciate the music. Another example of this, again, one involving Nintendo, is the Star Fox franchise. Even with the games themselves being very hit or miss in terms of reception, the music in these games is a big draw among the fans. And it can't be said that the music was merely tossed off. Look at the soundtrack for Star Fox Assault for the Nintendo GameCube. Several of the pieces of music there are reworked versions of tracks from the game Star Fox 64, redone in full orchestration. Once you've looked it up, tell me that time and effort weren't spent to make those pieces. Fans like myself would love to have a full official soundtrack to listen to on the go and stuff like that, even if we can't take the full game with us. Not to mention that with the lament by many gamers that gaming companies, the big names at any rate, are more interested in making money than anything else, it doesn't make much sense to not make this stuff accessible. Which brings me to yet another example, albeit a minor one. As some gamers may remember, the Sonic Origins compilation that was released last year upset some fans for one reason more than others. The remaster, if you want to call it that, of Sonic 3 didn't include the level music featured in the original release. That's because of rights issues with those tracks, which were created for the game by the development team led by Michael Jackson and Brad Buxer. Across numerous reissues of Sonic 3, The tracks have had to be replaced because the people running those music estates have been taking what I like to call copyright snobbery to ridiculous levels. It makes me want to ask them, what's the point of owning an intellectual property if you're not going to share it with the world at all? It reminds me of the painfully selective attitudes some musical artists or their right holders have when it comes to maintaining their official music catalog. Bob Seger is a perfect example of this in regards to his early albums. Sure, I can understand some embarrassment with, say, the Bob Seger System's Noah album, but why hold back with some of these other great releases? What's so wrong with Ramblin' Gamblin' Man or Back in '72? Getting back to the video game industry, I hope that video game soundtracks do become more widely available, either as downloads or on physical media in the near future. Otherwise, the owners of these intellectual properties are just wasting their own time and money, and depriving their core demographic of something that's very valuable to them.